Hiring freezes are a clear first step before the layoffs start happening. Hiring freezes, they impact job seekers, they impact employees as well. So if you work in tech, how prepared are you? In an interesting move, Amazon has internally announced, that they are effectively freezing hiring. This story was picked up by the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, the New York Times, and a myriad of others, but Amazon has basically announced that they are freezing hiring in their retail business for the rest of the year. The announcement was made not to the press, but via an internal email, but it leaked. Because of course it did. The email went out to internal headhunters, and it outlined that all roles, including tech roles, for the store's business were being frozen. The store's business includes online, retail, physical store presence, as well as logistics. This is big news. Big. To help you understand the scope of what this actually means, Amazon effectively just tossed 10,000 open roles right into the garbage bin. The email went out of its way to indicate that it was only about the retail business, meaning it doesn't impact AWS or presumably Kindle or the Alexa business or any of those, strictly the retail business. As a former senior executive for Microsoft, Oracle, and yes, also Amazon, there's a bit of, decoding that needs to happen here to help you really read between the lines to understand what they really announced. First, the email went out of its way to tell the recruiters to not call this a hiring freeze. Let's be clear about what that is. That is purely messaging for the outside world. And by messaging to the outside world, what this basically is corporate speak for, you know what? We know that this entire message is going to get leaked because employees are, they're always forwarding things to reporters. And we want to make sure that lazy bloggers copy and paste the "it's not a hiring freeze" into whatever article they write. So that's what lands in the Google search index. Cynical? Yeah. True? Also, yeah. By going out of their way to signal that this is not a hiring freeze, senior leaders are actually signaling that there's a bit of concern internally about the impact on the stock price as well as their ability to hire in other parts of the organization. To really underscore this point about this being messaging, the email went out of its way to say this is not a hiring freeze, but then went on to say that all of these open roles would be closed in the coming days. For those of you who are not aware for how corporate speak really works, what this is trying to do is take a thing that they want to appear small to not appear to be far, far bigger. Finally, in a statement that likely no one is going to be held accountable, the email went on to say that Amazon their intent is to recreate some percentage of these roles in the new year. Some. The use of the word "some" here is another way of being very vague and not being clear about what that actually looks like. Does 10,000 become 9,500 or does 10,000 become, 50? Who knows? To be clear, Amazon is not the first of the companies to announce hiring freezes. There have been others in recent weeks, which we'll get to in a moment. But the key message here is when freezes get announced, layoffs tend to follow. As a great example of this, Meta, formerly known as Facebook, they've been having some trouble with their core product, both the Facebook platform as well as Instagram, as attention continues to transition and ramp for TikTok. So Facebook has basically been trying to figure out a way to increase usage of their platform, increase ad sales, because they're watching their ad sales and their ad units fall. And they're scrambling to find the next winner in their kind of product suite as to how they're going to continue to grow the company. Thus, their continued investment in the metaverse and changing their name to Meta. And so as these stories go, the first story we saw was Meta announcing that they were going to reduce their budgets and reduce their investments in certain areas and be pretty aggressive across the company. Okay, but very recently, as in yesterday, a story showed up where, not all is well in the land of Zuck, and they're in fact trying to trim massive amounts of headcount. Not to be outdone, Google a few weeks ago announced that they were going to be cutting back on some of their speculative R&D groups, right? The article seemed to indicate, this is a small amount of people, maybe only 120 folks. Cool, but, because there's always a but Google CEO Sundar Pichai also has been making a lot of noise, both internally and externally, about the need for the company to basically be more efficient. Read, employees need to be more efficient. And they need to right-size their business. Read, we need to reduce headcount. Whatever you do, don't try to kid yourself. If you're an employee of any of these companies, or basically an employee in tech, that all is fine. Because, it's not. For those of you who only read the news, you might think that this news coming out of big tech is the beginning. But really, it's more of a lagging indicator. Because as recently as a couple quarters ago, if you pay attention to the VC community, you've seen valuations getting cut. You've seen companies that are trying to raise funds, either they're struggling to get the round closed, they have to raise less money, or perhaps they can't even get the round closed at all. VC firms have also indicated that they're starting to reduce the size of the checks that they're writing. What this means in general is that there's just less money in the tech industry. And when you're a company that doesn't make any money or you're still operating in a negative, well, it's a little bit hard to run your business the way you've been running it if you have less runway available to you. Operational right sizing is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Whether it's big tech or small tech, reduction in forces are coming. Job losses. That slight whisper that started a few months ago that's now starting to turn into a muffled murmur in the room that's going to shortly turn into a loud scream is basically buckle up. Things are about to get bumpy. If you've watched this far in the video, you're worried about the coming storm and you'd like some advice on what you can do to prepare, whether you're a current job seeker or you're currently employed and maybe worried about job layoffs or jumping off a sinking ship. For those of you who are in active job search mode, look, just keep doing what you're doing, but you have to know and prepare for the ghosting, which is going to come. Look, with hiring freezes and slowdowns, all of those HR managers and the hiring managers that were sliding into DMs, well, some of them might go quiet on you and you just have to accept that. Second, if you do happen to secure an interview, you have to take it far more seriously than you were taking it before. Why? Because there's likely to be a lot more people competing for that role. Look, with layoffs and hiring freezes, all of a sudden you're going to get a funneling effect where for the available jobs that are still open, all of the attention is going to be put on those and you're going to be competing against far more people for the same role. What does take it seriously mean? Well, essentially when you're telling your stories in an interview, you want to focus on what you did, why you did it, and how you did it. It's all about preparing your stories the right way. I have a list that I'll provide a link to at the end of this video that is a link to my playlist of how I would prepare if I was in a job search mode now, a guy who has 20 plus years of big tech experience. And this is what I do every day when I'm talking to my customers about how they should be structuring their stories and how to prepare. Third, you have to know that the process is likely to stretch out. With hiring freezes comes a hesitancy to make a bad hire, right? People aren't just like, yeah, just hire. Like, whoa, what if we get this one wrong? So the process might stretch out. Know that communications are going to lag and it's going to be super, super frustrating. And finally, and this, I cannot say this loudly enough, you're going to have to ratchet back your salary expectations, your total comp expectations. It is likely that those numbers are going to come down and you just have to be mentally prepared for that. For those of you who are currently gainfully employed, but you're thinking about maybe leaving where you're at because the company may not be going in the direction you want, or you're potentially going to be impacted by layoffs, what can you do? The very first thing I would do, very first thing, like do not wait another second. Go to LinkedIn, into account settings, under visibility, and for the love of all that is holy, turn off share profile updates with your network. Turn it off. The problem with LinkedIn, the biggest problem I've always had with LinkedIn is if you breathe on your LinkedIn profile, it tells everybody. And now everybody you work with, including your hiring manager, probably, or your boss, they're going to come to you like, hey, why are you updating your LinkedIn profile? And if they don't come to you, they're thinking, why are they updating their LinkedIn profile? That puts your name on the chopping block. That puts your name in their mind as someone who's looking to leave. Do not give them a reason to be staring at you with the eye of Sauron. Second, you need to start thinking about how you're going to take advantage of your network and leverage the folks in your network by reaching out proactively now. Don't wait until you've lost your job, because if you've lost your job and part of a mass layoff, there's a lot of people that lose it, and everyone's going to be reaching out to everybody they know saying, yeah, I need work, I need to do this or whatever. So you have invested in your relationships up to this point. Send nice emails. Send, hey, I'd like to catch up with you. Hey, what's going on? Hey, just wanted to check in. Reach out proactively now before you need anything. So at least you're front of mind. You've made an effort to get in contact with people that are at companies that maybe you want to work for, or maybe have connections to other companies, but start reaching out to those contacts now. A nice little side benefit of this is, look, the reality is it is far, far better to have someone who works at the company that you want to work at take your resume and hand it to a hiring manager or an HR manager or recruiter than for you to send it into their websites, which is basically a black hole. Next, I would have you start on your story preparation. That means write everything down. Just start writing everything down. Commit to the interview prep process. What can you use as content? Well, you've got your resume. Maybe you've updated it, maybe you haven't, doesn't matter. That's a good source of stories. But if you have performance reviews at your current company or past companies that you've kept or have the ability to print up now, print them up, make sure you have them. That's going to be a pretty good outline of all of the stuff that you did awesomely. Awesomer. Awesome sauce. You've been awesome, and here's your performance evaluation. Use that as a source for your stories to start preparing how you talk about how great you are at the job that you do and why you would be a great add-on to whatever company that you're targeting for the next role. The primary reason to start thinking about preparing right now, is that from what I'm hearing from all of my customers, the time window from when they first hear from an HR manager to when they want them on the phone with a hiring manager or that first phone screen could be as short as 48 hours. That is not a lot of time, and you do not want to go into cram mode when you're trying to just all of a sudden force all your stories onto paper or try to commit them in memory or get something fresh in your mind so you don't sound like a bumbling person on the phone trying to make stuff up or ad-libbing your way through an improv session with a hiring manager. and ultimately they go, I don't know, this person's not that great, and they move on. Don't create that situation for yourself. If you need any practice with interviews or feedback, remember that the bulk of this channel is mock interviews, real mock interviews, where I have overlaid my analysis on what the candidates did well, what the candidates did wrong, with additional analysis for how you, as someone who's going through the interview process, can rethink what you're saying, doing, and presenting to make sure that you show up as your authentic self, but also your best self, so that you stand out in the interview and land your dream job. And as always, don't forget, there are plenty of more free resources available for you at interviewatt.com.